topics and opinions expressed in the following show are solely those of the hosts and their guests and not those of W4CY Radio, its employees, or affiliates. We make no recommendations or endorsements for radio show programs, services, or products mentioned on air or on our web. No liability, explicit or implied, shall be extended to W4CY Radio or its employees or affiliates. Any questions or comments should be directed to those show hosts. Thank you for choosing W4CY Radio.
Well, hello and welcome. This is Bill Martinez, and we are live. Great to have you along with us, sharing a part of your day. For more information on the show, you can check it out, BillMartinezShow.com. John Guandolo is going to be joining us in just a moment, the Counter Terrorism Expert, former FBI agent and co-author of Sharia, The Threat to America. We're going to talk national security. The headline here is the FBI Director Wray says it's all red lights of danger for America. And why not? For all that we're hearing, open borders, as many as 12,000 last week on a couple of days, illegal immigrants coming into the country. On average, we're talking about 5,000 to 6,000 illegal immigrants entering the United States illegally on a daily basis. It's no wonder our borders are overwhelmed. It's no wonder that Congress is holding back the purse on giving money to Ukraine without addressing the southern border. I say Ukraine, and Israel is also in that package of debate as well. The fact of the matter is the dangers are clear, they're imminent, and they're no longer existential. John Guandolo, welcome to the show. Good to have you with us, sir.
Thank you, Bill. It's great to be on with you as always.
Well, John, you have been for decades sounding the alarm, and clearly the administration right now doesn't care about an alarm. As you and I discussed the last time, this is happening on purpose by design. You can't say it's a level of incompetence because I think you give them too much credit. They are doing what it is that they want to do, whether it's Mayorkas, Joe Biden, Kamala Harris, the whole cabal, right?
That's absolutely right. And as you and I have talked about on this show, everything we've been experiencing the last 5 to 10 years in the United States is the intentional outcome of these hostile movements, the communist movement, the jihadi movement, their collaborators and their financiers. And it's all been coming to fruition these last few years.
Mm-hmm. Who's at the top of the heap? Is it the World Economic Forum, the globalists? I mean, who are the main string pullers here, John?
Well, in the United States, the Democrat leadership is you can make a very strong argument, and I do, mm-hmm. that the Democrat Party has been taken over, I would argue, for more than 2 decades by the communist movement in the United States. You just look at their platform, you look at their actions, it mimics those things. At the international level, absolutely, you've mm-hmm. got, but it's more than just the World Economic Forum, but definitely they are a main driver because mm-hmm. they're completely enmeshed and working directly with the leadership of both the communist movements and the Islamic movement. You've literally got one of the most senior leaders in the global Islamic movement, the Secretary General of the Muslim World League, Mohammed al-Issa, working directly with the World Economic Forum and with major parts of the international communist movement. So here's at the top of the jihadi food chain, working with the Klaus Schwab and the top of the one world government tyrannical World Economic Forum. And the World Economic Forum is working directly with leaders in the United States, North America, Europe, Asia, and elsewhere, and has trained them. Right. You've got people like you mentioned, Director Wray of the FBI participated in the last couple World Economic Forum conferences. So, it's a mess, but who's at top of the food chain? It depends on whether we're talking at the international level, but whether we're talking in the United States level, it's Barack Obama and the Democrat Party. Mm-hmm. And really equal to that is the Republican leadership, who is holding the door open for everything the Democrats and the communists and jihadis are doing.
It is amazing to think how our country has been so hijacked, John. And that's a shock to people, whether it's Trevor Loudon and his extensive research that he's been reporting on and talking about how the communists have inculcated every branch of government. Over 100 card carrying communists are elected officials. It makes you wonder how duplicitous they are. And you don't have to wonder very long, because the fact of the matter is they are. Though they put their hand on a Bible and swear allegiance to protect our country from all enemies, foreign and domestic, it's as if their fingers are crossed behind their back as they make this false vow. And this is the kind of stuff that has been going on, like you said, for decades, and it has permeated every aspect of our lives. I mean, so much so that here recently, just even over, the persecution of Jews in America, we have 3 Ivy League schools that can't even call it for what it is. One finally did, and she stepped down, but the other 2 are holding ground right now. Harvard, I guess, has decided to hold on to their president. But this really speaks of such an antithetical philosophical position that is against 100% of our constitutional rights.
Well, that's right. And so there's 2 big things you bring up there. First, at the university and collegiate level, it's been over 70 years that the communists have gone into the United States university and collegiate system and penetrated that. They're now into the elementary school, junior high, high school level. They created many of these teachers unions and other organizations. The Google Classroom that's now very popular. What does that allow those who want to control the narrative to do? Well, it takes away the creativity and initiative of teachers and allows the leadership at the national level through Google Classroom to say, here's what you should teach. Here's the format you should teach it. And again, if you don't use this, then we're not giving you federal funding. I mean, it's always tied to dollars. And so what you mentioned at the beginning, I think people are shocked when they realize how coordinated the effort is and how advanced it is.
Well, and as you say, I mean, they've taken over the educate. Well, that happened at the turn of the last century when Dewey, who's known as the father of public education. I mean, just a little bit, you don't even have to go into a deep dive and you understand philosophically where this guy was coming from. So it's no wonder, but it was all part of that attitude of a slow, consistent, steady walk through the institutions. And here they are today. And it seems that things are moving so much faster, John, because we're beyond the tipping point. We're on the downside of the hill and picking up speed as we're going down and crashing and burning.
I would argue that's true. And I think it is going to be very difficult to turn this around. But I believe it's possible. Certainly, it would be nice to have God's direct intervention, but have we done anything to deserve it? We're still murdering babies in this country. We are still allowing corrupt. We're voting for, the people are putting into power people that are corrupt, people that provide individuals in leadership positions that provide the citizens whatever they want, with no sense of responsibility or duty as a citizen.
Right.
And I think so long as the people are acting in this way, we're asking for the whole thing to come down. Now, those people who are patriots, and I believe there are a lot of them, really need to understand, as you and I have discussed on this show previously, it's at the local county level that people have to flush the bad people out, the communist jihadis, their financiers and their collaborators, and reestablish the founding principles in elementary schools, junior high schools, in the business community, in the churches, in the synagogues. And until those things are done, there's going to be no impact on what the enemy is doing.
John Guandolo is with us, the counterterrorism expert, former FBI agent. John, this is why you've been training people at a local level because it's most effective. Things can happen with incredible rapidity, but there needs to be employed a specific strategy here to get you the net results. And we're losing time here. We don't have a lot of time to waste. We've got to make up for lost time because, shame on us. We, the people, thought we could trust the elected officials. We didn't realize that, we're seeing it manifest clearly, even though the Democrats resist that there's no evidence. I think there's enough evidence to see that the Biden family has been bought and sold and they're corrupt. Okay. And it's not just the Biden family. The fact that you've got so many Democrats running interference and supporting this kind of behavior really is a telltale sign, in my humble opinion, John. It's like this thing is so pervasive in the ruling class that the ruling class can't see it. I've been asking forever here, that you've got this consistent 40% that supports Joe Biden. And I'm going, where are they? Who are they that would support energy dependence, would support less jobs, support inflation, support the cost of our living the way that it has accelerated under the leadership of Joe Biden, not to mention open borders and what bodes down the road for America's citizen. Who would support that? And then, of course, last week we saw the debate between Gavin Newsom and Ron DeSantis. And I go, there's one of the 40% that is all in for this insanity. And he is the apparent heir, standard bearer for the Democratic Party. If Joe Biden should hiccup, there's lots of people who believe that he should be the candidate of choice as, a potential, president, if not soon, then down the road.
Yeah, so there's a lot to unpack there. I agree with your assessment. I would say you mentioned, and we talked about, this is what they're doing is intentional.
Mm-hmm.
And if we just go back not too far, just look at the last 7 or 8 years. And what we see is from the time Mr. Trump came into office and even before, the Russia collusion lie. Mm-hmm. And there's that. And we have all the evidences on the table now that the leadership of the Democrat Party broke federal law. And in addition to that, and I would argue for those wondering how they break federal law, mm-hmm. Because I think there were a number of federal laws broken when you, so you've got, first let me say this, they said one thing under oath and then they said something publicly. Yeah. That's not a violation of the law, but it shows you that they know they were lying. But when they took action as official action as a part of their duties, then they are abusing power, which is a violation of the federal law. Mm-hmm. And we put members of Congress in jail for that. And I would argue that this is a part of a criminal conspiracy that can be handled under the RICO statutes, racketeering statutes, to conspire to overthrow the president of the United States, really? As well as overthrow the U.S. government, because mm-hmm. it's part of a much larger operation to do that. And these are the same personalities, the same 30 or 40 people that are involved. Mm-hmm. Many of them are members of the U.S. Senate and U.S. Congress or in other positions of power, like cabinet right. level positions. So you've got that, as well as like James Comey and Andrew McCabe and Peter Strzok, who took actions that were definitely in violation of the law. They lied to a federal judge. They lied about the affidavit, all of that stuff. Mm-hmm. That's all documented. We all know that now. Now walk forward. When you have 51 members of the intelligence community, to include the director of national intelligence, 5 CIA directors, the general counsel for the CIA, the general counsel for the NSA, the directors of the National Counter Terrorism Center, Secretary of Defense, this level of people who lie intentionally to the public, that the idea that there's something criminal that will be exposed on Hunter Biden's laptop, they call it Russia disinformation. They intentionally lied. This is the key. They intentionally lied to advance an enemy operation whose goal is to advance the communist Chinese, to advance the communist movement in the United States, and because they're working seamlessly at the local and national level with the jihadis, to advance operations and criminal networks and movement, capital M movements, whose stated goal is to overthrow the U.S. government. These people are in violation of law. This is sedition. It's treason. It's conspiracy to commit murder. It's money laundering. There are so many criminal violations in here, and it's not going to get fixed at the federal level because nowhere in the Republican Party is anybody doing really anything of substance about it. And again, I want to be clear. The Republicans are not only not doing anything, they are holding the door open for all of these enemies.
Yes. Yeah, John, I mean, talk about conspiracy, because that's the thing that comes to mind. I mean, they keep trying to pin the label of, conspiracy and insurrection on Donald Trump when it is they themselves. I mean, there are so many bodies of conspirators lying around. You can't even count them all, from the Democratic side. And to your point, I agree. The Republicans are compromised to the point that, at some point, like the revolutionaries of our founding, John, they had to pull it all on the line, their reputation, their treasure, their very lives. And, I think we could be at that defining moment now. And I believe that if any of that's going to happen, it would happen more likely on the side of the Republican than it is the Democrats. The Democrats they're such ideologues, and they've rendered themselves, as Jordan Peterson would say, stupid, to the point that forget about the Constitution, forget about, their constituency, forget about their fellow American. It is about a whole different agenda that is wrapped in conspiracy, that involves every aspect of government, and even the mainstream media, social media, how they've piled on to offer cover and to ignore and really abandon their reason to exist. They are MIA in their duty to the American people, which is to hold the government accountable, is it not?
Yeah, that's exactly right. And so it's interesting when people say, these guys, these men, these women, whether it's your mayor, your governor, the president, your member of the House or U.S. Senate, when we complain about them, the problem is the American people.
Yeah.
And the American people have failed to do their duties and failed to bear the responsibilities of ensuring those in position of governance are adhering to the standards of the Declaration, the ideal, and doing what you said at the top of the show, swearing an oath to protect and defend against all enemies, foreign and domestic, and doing it. And what we see is a large percentage in the House and a large percentage in the Senate who are traitors, flat out traitors. They are communists, they're jihadis, they're anti-Americanists, some of them are Satanists. These are people that are perpetrators of evil in the system, and they're in violation of their oaths, and they should have been removed from power.
Yeah.
And many Americans don't know what to do. And honestly, Bill, that's why for so long, for so many years, I've been working, and my colleagues, we've been working to train citizens at the local level, because I learned over the last 18 to 20 years, I was very optimistic and idealistic that when back in the early 2000s, when I was working with members of Congress and national security advisors and former CIA and FBI directors who were good people, that, hey, when myself and one of my colleagues, who were the first ones to brief people about this problem and the real threats. First, the jihadi threats. Why was Al-Qaeda doing what it was doing? The Muslim Brotherhood movement and the jihadi movement in the United States and Europe. Why were they doing it? How were they doing it? And getting people to understand it was very different. It's much different than just people blowing things up or flying planes into buildings. They're wearing suits and they're driving policy at the State Department,
exactly,
at the Treasury, in the national security staffs, in the White House. And when people start to understand that, and then when you see they're actually working with the communist movement at a growing level from the late 90s to today, where today they're, as I said, they're operating seamlessly.
Right.
And
it's amazing, John, to your point, after 9/11, how much cover was given by the administration, George W. Bush, we had to be respectful of Muslims. And I can understand how things could get, potentially out of control, and we could have a knee-jerk reaction like what happened in World War II with the Japanese. But regardless, I mean, it was like we went overboard here. We just kind of kept an open mind, so much so that our brains fell out, and we allowed these insurgents to come into every aspect of our government and to be in positions of control where they were influencing policy and, flat out breaking the law, like, what happened with these three amigos recently, one of which finally lost his clearance. But he was the one that gave authorization for Iran to get back into the oil business, right?
That's right. You've got, I would argue, if you look at these individuals inside the system that are agents of hostile foreign powers like Iran, in positions of, for instance, the chief of staff for ASD Solik, the Assistant Secretary of Defense for Special Operations, Low Intensity Conflict, arguably one of the most important positions inside the Department of Defense. And there's the enemy.
Yeah.
And that level of penetration and control is so significant. I would argue it's unrecoverable right now. And I've said this on your show before.
Right.
It's not like new. It's unrecoverable. These departments have got to have a massive purge. And I'm going to say it again. I believe everyone in all branches of the service with a star on their shoulder should be fired, should have been fired on Inauguration Day for the Trump administration. And I was able to make that recommendation, which was not adhered to. That's his choice. And he paid the price for it.
Right.
And he got, I think, Mr. Trump's failure to purge the system like needed to happen, and he completely failed to do it. Then he paid the price for it.
Yeah.
And it was explained to him by others.
John, I think that there's no excuse for Donald Trump, because I think he's a smart guy. And in certain regard, he should have known better. But see, this speaks to the complexity of our government. How many layers are involved here? And you've got somebody who has 100 days to bring in staff, to try to understand what's going on. He doesn't think that the outgoing president is so diabolical that he's going to move 4,000 of his administration members into the bureaucracy. So he sets them as moles within the incoming government.
That's right.
How is Trump going to understand and know that nuance, especially being an outsider?
Well, so if you or I were president, just go with me on this for a minute.
Right.
And you asked, if it was you and you asked me, John, what would you want me to do in my first 2 weeks? I would say, well, let's start with shutting down the Agriculture Department, the Department of Education. Shall we go on? Health and Human Services. I mean, what are we doing? I would cut the number of cabinet departments by 2/3. I would cut the budget of the others. Because what we have, and then after doing that, I would concurrently fire everyone probably today, colonel and above in the military. And I would put in people, I would bring people in who are lieutenant colonels and put them in charge.
Mhm.
And I would have a vetting process. But, you know, the fact that we have ISIS, Al-Qaeda, and Hamas working in the government, you've got Iranian, Pakistani agents working in the government, you've got Chinese agents working in the government, it should tell you your vetting process sucks. So
Yeah.
right then, I would have a team of people, and I already know who those are, and they would be the ones who would be vetting everybody.
Right.
And it would be a slower process, but you wouldn't get the kind of enemies of liberty like we have now in our government.
No,
That's
I agree.
the first step.
Yeah.
Now, the second step is you have got to go into the bureaucracy and take those people and fire them by name. And that's going to take probably your first 6 months in office. But most of us that have been doing this, we know who those people are. And so you just say, okay, these 1,500 people, you're fired today. Get out.
Right.
And don't take anything with you. Just your access to that building is out. But if we've already closed down, for instance, the Department of Education, you don't need to worry about it. I would shut the UN down and send all those people gone. That is a counterintelligence sieve. So there are major things Mr. Trump could have done that he failed to do. And it's not, again, I agree with you. It's not a picking on Donald Trump, but he walked into a complete storm unaware. But by making a guy like Reince Priebus your chief of staff, you're just asking to get your butt handed to you in the first, year of your administration.
Yeah, it's almost like you need to have a Godfather moment. Remember when they went to war and they had to fire the family attorney? And Michael tells him, says, look at, hey, you've been our family attorney, but we need a wartime conciliary. And this is what, conservatives or what patriots who believe in this country require is we're going to need a wartime president, a wartime conciliary. We're going to need people who don't care about the Beltway parties, the cocktail parties, that their commitment is to the Constitution and to we the people. And equally, to your point, John, we the people need to step up. I mean, the fact of the matter that this document leads with we the people, boy, that says right there that we're front and center. And it's almost like I think that what should happen is that we the people, it's not just the military or law enforcement, but we the people should take an oath of office, that we should take the same oath as everybody in the military, because we all have skin in the game and we need to understand that. And we also need to understand how we got where we are right now, why 40% of the American people are so prejudiced and compromised, because the government has bought and sold them. They've bought them with our money. They've bought their vote. They have, for minorities and blacks in particular, they've put them back on the plantation. We have a modern day plantation that has been constructed for them by the Democratic Party, and that it has kept them down. And, Joe Biden talks about systemic racism. Well, the systemic racism that exists is that has been constructed by the Democratic Party. And that's what gives them a big part of that 40% base. The other part is the bureaucrats who work for the government. This is why, the wealthiest zip codes in the country are around DC, because these are all bureaucrat supported, taxpayer supported. These people are making huge amounts of money at our expense. And what's the return on investment? What return does the taxpayer get? We get bupkis. We're getting robbed three ways to Sunday here, John.
So again, that is I concur, and I would say that the greatest failure, I believe, is a failure of leadership. And so you brought up some issues. You brought up the issue earlier, the border. So let me use that as an example, and I'll begin with an example from my time in the FBI. We were having a discussion about counterterrorism matters. And the special agent in charge of the Washington field office on a particular decision had his general counsel sitting next to him. And his response to a question about, will we do this thing, was, well, if it's okay with him, it's okay with me. And I didn't say it publicly, but I said it privately. That's incorrect.
Mm-hmm.
You're the leader.
Right.
He's the general counsel. If you delegate your leadership to him, you're doing something you're not authorized to do.
Yeah, you're
You have the authority.
subordinating your leadership.
It's exactly what you're doing.
Exactly.
So it's the same thing. If I live in Texas, if I look at our governor who says, well, I'd like to do these things, but the lawyers say this and the federal government's saying this. Hey, grow a set of testicles.
Exactly.
Do what needs to be done to protect the citizens under the Texas Constitution, the U.S. Constitution, and stop worrying about bureaucratic bullcrap.
Exactly.
But we have leaders that have little courage and little capability to lead, but the people of Texas are tolerating it. And again, they're going to get, I know I'm a citizen of Texas, but I don't support it. And I've been very vocal about it and actually worked with legislators to try to do something about it as well as citizens. But people are going to get what they get. If you keep electing Chuck Schumer to Senate, well, tough. You're getting now what you deserve.
Exactly.
If you elect criminals and corrupt people to office, you're going to get what you deserve.
Right. And John, I think the thing that is disturbing about this is that people don't even realize the power that is available to them. Leadership has, as you said, subordinated their authority, their rightful positions to, that's what leadership does. Leadership takes you to where you need to be versus where you are. But there needs to be that proper assessment and commitment. Again, leadership has a clear understanding of how much pain people are in the current condition and how much better it can be if you take the next step. And that's what you lead people to, and you make up that difference. You don't run a government by polling. But what's happened in, I'd say, the last 20, 30 years or so, we've been a government that has been run by polling and not leadership. And that's why it's so easy for leadership to be so compromised and for us to get the leadership that we get. Now, here comes Donald Trump on the scene. And what Donald Trump's a leader. He's a chief executive officer. He's been that most of his life. And he demonstrates those characteristics and principles. And what happens? Half the country goes sideways. They go brain damaged over it because they're not used to having somebody who is a bona fide leader. Does that make sense?
Absolutely, it does. Absolutely, it does. And it goes to the point that I think the failure of citizens to understand what the founding principles are and how the country is supposed to run, holding their leaders accountable, and then electing people who are actually leaders.
Exactly.
To me, that's the failure. That's the whole thing right there. You have citizens that don't know or don't believe they actually have duties as citizens and responsibilities. I think you just vote or you don't. That's kind of it. You live your life and you leave everyone else alone. No, that's not it at all.
Right.
You are supposed to be holding your officials accountable. So if you wake up one day and say, hey, how'd this happen? How come we've got this, how did we end up with these 5 lions wandering around our house, eating our children? Well, because you let them in.
That's right. Exactly.
And then you fed them. And then you ignored them. So you're getting what you deserve. We are getting, as a nation, what we deserve right now. I'd argue, actually, we haven't yet gotten what we deserve. And can we stave it off? I don't know. But
but for a few patriots, John, I think, to your point, and people need to grasp this, and hopefully they have the capacity to understand this. When you look at congressional leadership today, Senate and the House, let's just look at those two bodies there. Who are the ones that stand out? I mean, it's not everybody. It's very few. And when these members stand out, and represent, as you're characterizing here, leadership qualities, what happens? The natives go nuts, don't they?
Well, that's right, because the system is set up to correct you, to
Yes.
put you in that lane. And those people that are out of the lane, well, then they make sure you don't get the money. You can just take a simple example of Congressman Allen West. They literally redistricted his district so he didn't
get him out of there. Yeah.
I mean, this is like, the system is so bloody corrupt, and Americans are, but these things take time. Americans are coming to see it. And I agree with what I think was your assessment, that I don't see this happening without serious and significant action on the part of the citizens.
Yeah.
And this isn't going to just go away.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. John, you and I have had some conversation on this, but I think you know where I'm coming from. Ultimately, this is a spiritual issue. It starts in the hearts of every man and woman who calls themselves an American. And we need to pause a moment and do an assessment of who we are in character, morality, the values that we hold to. I believe in many regards that what America is suffering from is a spiritual condition. And what America is infected with right now has been this evil that has been allowed to permeate our education, permeate marriages, permeate families. I mean, look at us. I mean, we're not happy enough to kill 100 million babies, innocents in the womb. And now we have to alter them. So if they don't like their sex, we come up with this theory that we can chop off their genitals and somehow they're happier, when there's no indication or evidence that that is the case whatsoever. If anything, the misery continues along with the suicide index. So all this insanity that you referenced when we first started talking about is part and parcel to our spiritual condition. And I don't know how much more America can handle as a country. And it's not just America, because I see this happening around the world, this same type of condition, because of what's happening at the globalist level, as you talked about, the World Economic Forum, these uber elites, these oligarchs that want to control it all. This movement is a concerted movement that really puts us in the crosshairs of good and evil. And you've got to choose. America's citizens have got to choose at this crossroads. Do they want good? Do they want evil? Do they want life, or do they want death? It's pretty much an academic question and answer. One that I know that some presidents of universities have a hard time answering. Even a Supreme Court justice who had a hard time answering what a woman is. I mean, even it is academic, in my humble opinion, but you have to be humble, and we have to be a bit introspective to see, are we getting, like you asked, you said, are we getting the government that we desire? We're getting the one we deserve, but it's not the one that we desire, I don't think.
So that is the root of it. And I will share with your audience, that's the reason that the work I have done since I've been doing it, it's not enough to know the real threats, both organized and the disorganized threats, and do something about it, which I've always trained people to do, really since shortly after 9/11. But that's why it included in what I shared, that it's got to be that two-pronged approach. You have to reestablish the founding principles.
Exactly.
And what I'm shocked at is Americans who identify as patriots and Christians, or patriots and faithful people to the God of the Old and New Testament. They will when I begin laying out and teaching about the founding principles, I would say close to 95 to 100% are unaware. And these are people that consider themselves active patriot, Christian patriots. And that's a big problem. When citizens don't understand, like I'll give an example. At the time that the U.S. Constitution was ratified, every state constitution in America required a public profession of Christian faith to hold public office, to elected office.
Right.
Now, here's the question I'll pose without, standing on one side of the issue or the other, and I'm doing this intentionally. Did the legislatures of all those states and the governors of those states and the leadership of the federal government at the time, did they all get wrong their understanding of how we were supposed to be governed? Or today, we're getting it right? I'm just asking the question, because when you ask the question, it answers itself.
Exactly.
George Washington and John Adams and John Jay and Thomas Jefferson and Ben Franklin and James Madison and Alexander Hamilton and Samuel Adams, they all, and so many others, didn't get it wrong. They got it right. And they understand that those biblical principles and the principles more as important, but really more broadly, of natural law that make up the moral standard legally at the time of the founding. They used Blackstone's commentaries as the primary source of law that made it clear that those two principles have to undergird the law, and no law can be made that constitute the principles of natural law and Holy Scripture, because it undergirds our government and our legal system. And until it's returned to that, the chance of this country not imploding are zero. It's going to happen.
Yeah, even John Adams, said quite clearly that the Constitution was designed for a moral and righteous people. I mean, these are Christian terms; these are biblical terms. And today, I mean, look what's happening in our Congress. Look what's happening in our government. Those virtues are obviously missing, and it's very anemic. And so this is what we have running our government. And this is also why you've had a tipping point here, John, because what should happen is government should be downstream the public, right? The people. And it's the other way around. What it is now is you've got the people downstream the government. So the government right now is dividing us. They're getting in all this racial divide and these wedge issues, and they're telling people what they're to believe and how they are to behave. It's okay if a segment of our community wants to go totally revolutionary and go smash and grab, take $1,000 worth of property, destroy local businesses, do $2 to $4 billion of damage, based on a lie, and a lie that we know that has been cleared up by the science. Remember, we're supposed to follow the science, and the science has come back and give us the truth. But no, we can't handle the truth because we don't have the leadership. As you mentioned, it has subordinated its leadership role to the mob, and the mob is controlling the United States of America today.
Yeah, I think it's practically demonstrable, and that's what I do for a living, that the key components of our government are captured.
Yes.
And at the federal level, at least, I would argue in a lot of local jurisdictions. And again, I always ask the question, name one governor that has actually identified these two movements, the communist and Islamic movement, and is actively working against them. Some, a very small number, are working against the policies that these movements have put into place. And so we're in a battle against policies. But no war has ever been won by changing a policy.
Exactly.
Or fixing an issue.
Mm-hmm.
Wars are won by crushing enemies.
Exactly.
By vanquishing them or getting a complete and unconditional surrender. And so long as we are trying to fix policies, CRT in school or drag queen hour or the right to free speech, very important, election issues, the border issues, right to life. I believe all these things are important that we deal with, but they are throwing so many at us at a time. That we're incapable of doing anything about it. You got to go to the root. You got to go to the big part of the iceberg, not just the little part sticking out, the issues. You got to go to the enemy, the communist movement, the Islamic movement, and they exist in local communities, and we can identify them. And what I teach people to do is how to identify the leadership, the organizations, and flush them out of your community or render them much less effective, while, again, reestablishing founding principles in the local community. And
well, John, I think we can learn a lot with what's happening with Israel and Hamas. Israel and Hamas, this situation is such that Israel doesn't have a choice. They have got to rid the land of Hamas. There's no cohabitation. I mean, how do you cohabitate with somebody who wants you dead? I mean, that's absurd. And we've got, people in our government, Anthony Blinken, the president of the United States, still believing in some sort of two-state solution. So that is exactly the same thing that you're talking about right now in our everyday lives here in America. You cannot embrace corruption and think that you're somehow going to be immune to it. And embracing means that you reelect these people who are corrupt. You acquiesce. You don't take a stand. You don't hold to your birthright as an American citizen. You cannot subordinate. See, this is the problem, like you said, and I think it's great that you brought this up, John, because what has happened is we've systemically subordinated our rights, the rule of law, our morality to lesser thans, and we're getting what we deserve.
Yeah, the reason I love this discussion is I think we keep sharing with each other these ideas that I think your viewers will benefit from going a little deeper. And so let's take the two-state solution issue.
Okay, we've got about 3 minutes, John. So I want you to address that and a call to action, because we the people need to come together and do something about this. So go ahead.
This is a good way to kind of cap it off.
Okay.
So either these people you mentioned, Mr. Blinken and quite frankly, all the others in the U.S. administration, and also in Israel, who think that there's a way to be at peace with people who say, my goal is to rid the earth of you. We want to kill all of you. And then Jewish leaders, Israeli leaders have said, yeah, we hear that, but we want to find a way to coexist. Those people are either catastrophically stupid, they are incapable of leading because their makeup is so soft, and it might just be out of a good-hearted place, and I'll give them that benefit of the doubt, but they're incapable of making good leadership positions, or they're batting for the other team. If someone can think of a fourth option, I'm open to it. The reality is the Islamic movement has clearly said un-Islamic governments cannot exist on the planet. We have to destroy them, and primarily we have to rid the world of every Jew and the state of Israel.
Yeah, and every non-Muslim.
You have to deal with it realistically. So to your point, to close, the call to action is in the United States, which quite frankly is where my effort is and the work that myself and my colleagues utilize. You got to do it at the local level. I encourage people, johnguandolo.com is my website. People that want to get trained, we're the only ones in the United States doing this, training you how to identify these threats, how to lawfully rid your community of them, or again, render them much less effective and reestablish the founding principles. I believe in the United States, that's the only way to do it. The federal system is catastrophically corrupt, and most state governments, including good ones like Texas, are failing to do their duty. So it's not happening at the federal or state level. It's got to be at the local county level.
Well, there it is, ladies and gentlemen. Again, the website, John, that they can go to for more information.
JohnGuandolo.com, GUANDOLO.com.
There it is. John Guandolo, thank you so much for being with us. I appreciate it. God bless.
Thank you, Bill. God bless you.
Our thanks to John Guandolo, the Counter Terrorism Expert, former FBI agent, and co-author of Sharia, The Threat to America. And our thanks to you for joining us today and being a part of the solution and not adding to the problem. May God bless you and keep you. May he make his face shine upon you. May he be gracious unto you and give you his peace. Thank you so much for being with us. Take care. God bless.